Okay, so I'm Bill, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a drug addict. Oh, sorry. So I'm Bill, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a drug addict. Hi, welcome to everybody. I'll just say hi to everybody. Tom Kenzie, good to see you as always. Andrew, Aaron, Darlene, Melanie, Jeanette, Lisa, Melissa Marie, Miranda, and Monica. Thank you all for coming tonight. So, for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm just another alcoholic drug addict. Changed my life by doing all the 12 steps, and then I sponsor a lot of guys, and so I got to know the big book pretty well. I do believe I would call myself a student of the big book and try to live the program of action to the best of my ability every day. I've sponsored few hundred people. I have a really good insight on what the steps do if you work the steps properly, and I have a really good insight on if you don't work them properly, what happens. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because, for example, on Monday, one of my sponsees died. He's a guy that I haven't sponsored him for probably close to a year, but he wouldn't do what was required in the program. And on Monday, he passed away from the disease of alcoholism. About 2 months before that, another one of my sponsees passed away, and he had asked me specifically to sponsor him for a specific reason, and I know the reason, and I'm pretty good at sponsoring guys for that reason. And we're talking about defect of character, and he needed to work on something seriously, and then he decided that he was going to go and indulge in that defect and let me know nicely with a nice text, and I said, you know what, bro, I wish you all the best. And that guy passed away about 2 months ago, and I could go on and on and on. So the reason I do this is because people die, and I want to help people, get into the darkness of who they are and find out what makes you tick, and find out who you actually can become, and then try to spread the ripple effect of goodness, through your own family and through everywhere. But it takes some work and it takes some digging, and I just love doing this type of stuff, so that's why I'm doing it. I'm going to ask the question to you guys, does anyone tonight want to know anything specific about anything in particular, as far as maybe the design for living goes, or maybe you're really, really suffering with not being able to stop drinking or drugging. So I will focus tonight on the design for living, which I think is the most important aspect of this. I know that Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous focus on the substance, but I think if we treat alcoholism or drug addiction and the spiritual malady, I think we got a way better chance of not picking up. So does anyone have any questions or want to tell me why they're here and what they want to learn or know? Okay, so tonight, last week what we did is we talked about step 3. So I read the 12 and 12, step 3 in its entirety, and a lot of people don't really understand step 3. So what I try to do is the whole program is kind of based on step 3. Trying to learn how to turn our will and our lives over, and what exactly does that mean, and how do I actually do it. It's a difficult proposition to understand in its entirety. And to me, the backbone of step 3 is actually in step 6 and 7. 6 and 7 to me are the backbone of this program. They need to be understood, and they need to be implemented at a high level, and we implement 6 and 7 at a high level in step 10. I'm going to pick the topic tonight of steps 1, 2, and 3 in the design for living. And when I say steps 1, 2, and 3 in the design for living, it actually means turning my will and my life over to the care of God. Because that's essentially what the whole program is about. And we talk about the disease being a twofold nature. Everyone talks about the obsession and the allergy. Yeah, that's great. But in the doctor's opinion, what does Bill write? He writes, we are restless, irritable, and discontent unless we can again experience the ease and comfort that comes at once by taking the first few drinks. So telling me that the first step in this process is the spiritual malady. And if I learn how to treat the spiritual malady, not the obsession, I actually treat the obsession. And then I will never put the drink and drug in my hand. And just to kind of highlight that, in step 10 it says we have ceased fighting anyone or anything, even alcohol. Well, that's a very important line. I have ceased fighting anyone or anything, even alcohol. Because when I get here, that's the only thing that I think I'm fighting. And then another one of the promises in step 10 is the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. It says we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Actually, what the steps will do is they will place you in a position of neutrality within yourself and within your fellow man. And if you can place yourself in a position of neutrality with your fellow man and within yourself, you don't want to pick up a drink because you're not fighting anyone and anything. The problem and why we pick up is because we can't handle this. The alcoholism mind, and we need relief, and we fucking seek relief, and we need it now when we need it. And like the book says, we'll succumb to the desire again, as so many do, and we pick up a drink because we can't take it, and we have no effective mental defense. So if I can treat the spiritual malady, I am much, much further ahead. So that's what we're going to talk about in the steps 1, 2, and 3, but designed for living. Okay, so I'm powerless over people, places, and things, and my defects of character. That is what step 1 will be today. What is unmanageability today? Well, I've obtained a certain level of peace and serenity. So what is unmanageability for me? It is when my peace and serenity and contentment and the goodness in my life are replaced with fear, anxiety, judgment, and anything that makes me feel shitty. And if I keep allowing the person, place, or thing in my life, it's the same as the drink in step 2. Step 2, God restores me to sanity from the drink. Well, what's the insanity? Knowing what's going to happen, but I pick up the drink anyhow. And it's the same with the step 2 in Design for Living. I know what's going to happen if I allow this person in my life. If I allow this situation in my life. If I allow this defect of character not to be checked. The same things will always happen. And if you keep doing what you always did, you'll get what you always got, and you'll be drunk like you've always been. So we have to take this insanity of me running my life, is actually what it is, to step 3 and try to let God run the show, which is a very hard proposition. So I'm going to bring Tommy online because we're doing this together. It just so happens that Tommy and I can't get together right now due to the COVID thing. And he's got kids, and he's got to adhere to some other outside rules that he's adhering to. So, I'm going to ask Tommy some questions and get him to share his experience, because I know this man has put in a lot of work. I sponsor him, and I just want his take on the unmanageability of his life and how he's turned over a lot of these things. And I know he's got an ex-wife. I know he's got an ex-partner. I know that he has other things in his life that potentially could cause him unmanageability, but he has a bit of a process, and he understands what we're doing here. So Tommy, I don't know how we're going to do this, and bear with us. We're kind of doing some of this on the fly, just trying to develop a system. So yeah, Tommy, go ahead. What was making your life unmanageable, and how did you relieve yourself of some of that bullshit? Okay, thanks, Tommy. So what I want to emphasize here is Tommy and truth. The program is a program of truth. And we talk about rigorous honesty, and when you understand the literature, Bill W., who wrote How It Works, the whole first paragraph, and it's the biggest paragraph in How It Works, it's all about honesty. And one of my favorite lines when I'm working with somebody is, they are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. And the word rigorous means accurate. And when I learn how to grasp and develop a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty, then I'm able to work this program properly. And part of the honesty is I got to be honest with me, and I have to be honest with you. But the problem is, like Tommy explained, is it's so hard to be honest with self because we've been kind of indoctrinated with society belief systems that these things from outside of us are they make our judgments, they make our decisions, they make me do things that I don't actually want to do because I think I need these things. But a lot of that is a lie. So what I'm actually going to do here is I am going to read the step 3 in the big book. It's a fairly quick read, and I want to read it just because it kind of describes everything we're going to talk about tonight. So here we go. I'm going to start on page 60, and I'm going to start right after the A, B's, and C's. So being convinced right away. Being convinced is very important because the word convinced means without a fucking doubt. I got to be convinced. Convinced of what? I got to be convinced that a life run by me is not successful. I got to be convinced of the ABCs. Okay? So I'm going to be convinced of these ABCs. If I'm not convinced of A, B, and C, then there's no point of going on. In the original manuscript, it says if you're not convinced of these 3 pertinent ideas, then you may as well throw this book away or reread it. One of the 2. And I love how Bill does that in the original manuscript. So being convinced of A, B, and C, we were at step 3, which we decided. It's just a decision. This is just a launching point. It is not any way, shape, or form me turning my will and my life over because I have no idea what that is. Decided to turn our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? Yeah, great question. Well, the first requirement is that we be convinced. There it is again, convinced. That any life run on self-will by me can hardly be a success. So that's pretty much a requirement. If I'm not convinced that when I run the show, it turns out into a shit show, and if I think like 75% of my life is pretty good and the 25% I'm convinced is not, or 50-50, then this shit doesn't work. I need to, in my deepest part of myself, be convinced that when I run the show, it's a fucking shit show. Excuse my language, I'll work on that as we go through the night. So being convinced that any life run by me is hardly a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like the actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of his own players in his own way. And that's what Tommy was doing with his wife. He knew he's playing God, trying to tell himself and everybody, the world, that he knows what's best for her. He knows that she can't handle it and that she's going to lose her shit, and so he's trying to protect her. So he is trying to get the players and his arrangements, if they would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may be sometimes quite virtuous. He may even be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. So when I'm playing the show and I want something from you, I am going to be pretty nice about it. I'm going to come at you and, I'm going to be kind and considerate, and I'm going to ask you about your feelings and if you think this is okay, and I might even be patient, generous, and modest and self-sacrificing. I might even come out looking like a saint if you actually accept what I'm offering. I'm going to look like a saint at the end of the day, and then I'm really feeling like, I'm such a good person, right? But on the other hand, if you don't kind of do what I want through my mind and emotional blackmail and manipulation is really what I'm doing, then I might get mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. And I like that, because I remember in my own family when I would ask my wife to do certain things, I'd be all kind and nice and because I wanted something. But then she wasn't able to, or she had made plans, and then I'd get like indignant. I'd get a little egotistical and say then fuck this, and then I'm not going to do that, And then eventually she'd be like, okay, I'll change my plans. And then I get what I want. Why? Because I'm the actor, trying to manipulate shit so that we'll all be happy, right? I know what you guys want. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits, and we do. And what I want to highlight about this is when we do step 4, it says we considered its common manifestations. And the common ones only are in the book. Resentment, sex conduct, and fear. And in step 5, it says we ascertained in a rough way what the basic trouble is. So Bill's telling me that when I did my step 4, all I did was ascertain in a rough way what the basic trouble is. There's so much more work to do than just doing a 4 and a 5 out of the big book and moving on with your life. If you really want to grow spiritually and you really want to learn how to turn it over to God and never drink again and live the promises of the big book, there's much more work to do. And it's the very traits that I'm talking about, the various underlying defects. What usually happens, the show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think that life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more, becoming on the next occasion still more demanding or more gracious. I amp up my indignancy, or I ramp up my nice, or whatever it is. Still the play does not suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? Is he not really a self-seeker even when he's trying to be kind? And with my sponsees, what I like to use that line for is I asked them, I said, when you're out in life and you're trying to be kind, I want you to stop and go, why am I actually being kind? Why are you being kind? And then stop and think about it. Because I'm going to always use intention and just kind of go into my life with this intention that I'm just going to be kind to this person. But when I stop and think, I'm like, well, why am I being kind to this person? Oh, they own that company. And if I get to know this guy, I have a potential to get a job. Oh, this chick knows this other chick that I want to know. But I never would have actually talked to this chick. But I know she knows this other chick, and maybe there's a chance. And, there's just so many underlying things that we can actually not really see because it's masked by my intention when the motive was actually very selfish and self-seeking. So ask yourself sometimes, why are you being kind? Well, maybe you're self-seeking, and if you know you're not, then good, you're on the right track, right? This is my favorite delusion, my favorite sentence in the whole big book. This sentence is the whole basis of my sponsorship. Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? And when you look up the word victim, it means tricked or duped. Yeah, I'm a victim. I've been tricked and duped. I've been tricked by society. They told me if I had the right woman, if I had the right house, if I had this, if I had that, the right amount of money, then everything would be okay. But I've been tricked because it's a lie, right? So I'm tricked of a delusion, a lie that I hold true, and I believe it firmly, and you can't convince me otherwise. Even though when I look at the evidence, no woman has ever made me happy. No amount of money has actually ever made me happy. No house, no relationship, no nothing has ever given me the inner happiness that I ever really, really wanted. I could get the relief out of a woman, I could get the relief out of a car, but eventually the shine wears off. Okay? Of a delusion that we can rest, satisfaction. And another important word is rest. And you look at how he wrote rest, and it's W-R-E-S-T. And when you look up the word rest, it means pry. It means snatch. It means grab. And it means take. Am I not a victim, a guy that's been tricked, of a delusion, of a lie that I can pry and take out of life and wrest my happiness and satisfaction out of this world if I only manage well? Yeah, it's a fucking lie. This whole sentence tells me how much I need to turn my life over to the care of God. And this, me as a sponsor, this is the most important line in the big book for me as a sponsor. And I want to kind of bring it to step 7. So step 7, tradition 7. Tradition 7 is we're self-supporting. Alcoholics Anonymous is self-supporting through our own contributions. And everyone just thinks, well, yeah, AA just financially supports itself. But when you understand the book and the literature, the step 7 is a direct correlation with tradition 7. every step in every tradition, 1 for 1, 2 for 2, 3 for 3, and 7 for 7, they are exact correlations of each other. And what does actually step 7 mean? Well, tradition 7 means we're self-supporting with my own contributions, declining outside contributions. So AA is self-supporting. It needs nothing from outside of it to support itself because it has everything it needs and it declines outside contributions. Well, step 7. Well, what's step 7? Step 7 is the surrender to God. Step 7 is the surrender to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's actually surrender to God when you understand the literature and you read the step 7 prayer that ends with amen, meaning deal. I will do this now, God. And so me as a human being in step 7, I need to be fully self-supporting. I need to be walking and talking my truth. And I decline outside contributions to try to fill up the hole that's inside of me. And that's the essence of step 7. I need to be self-supporting. And I need to decline outside contributions like, you fill me up, miss. You complete me. Or this job gives me the self-confidence that I've always needed. My self-confidence needs to come from within self. And I need to be self-supporting, and then I am able to decline outside contributions for my happiness because I'm actually happy with myself. And why I brought that all up is because it really correlates with, is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest happiness and satisfaction out of this world if he only has everything from outside of him? And society's taught me that. My own parents taught me that. And it's a lie. Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things that he wants? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Is he not even in his best moments a producer of confusion rather than harmony? Our actor is self-centered, egocentric as people like to call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century, politicians and reformers who are all should be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him. And the alcoholic who has lost all and locked up. Whatever our protestations are most of us not concerned with ourselves, our resentments, and our own self-pity. And when we talk about alcoholism, that's what I need to treat. Alcoholism. I, self, me is the ism. And when I start treating I, self, me, which is the spiritual malady, then I'll start feeling some real peace and some serenity. So I need to treat the I, self, me, and we're talking about it right here. Are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our own resentments, and my own self-pity? And then it tells me the actual problem in this book. The alcohol and the drugs are not the problem. This is the total bottom of the issue right here. It's me. Selfish self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our troubles. I come in Alcoholics Anonymous and I think that I'm here just because I have a drug and alcohol problem, which I do. So I get through my first set of steps and I remove myself from that problem. But then I still feel really shitty and I feel anxiety and I feel discontentment and I feel all these fucked up things still. And I'm wondering, is this all Alcoholics Anonymous has for me? The booze and the drugs are gone and I did the steps. What's going on? No, there's way more. And the keys to the kingdom is understanding this part right here. Selfish self-centeredness. That we think is the root of the troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear. It's driven. Think about that. My fucking life is just driven by fear. 100 different forms of it. Okay? Self-delusion. Delusion. Lies that I tell myself. Lies that society's told me. Self-seeking. Self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation. But we invariably find that sometime in the past we have made decisions based on self which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So for me, anytime I feel discontentment or I feel off the beam or whatever, I can usually follow the breadcrumbs back to a decision based on self that I made. Either I was being a snarky, sarcastic asshole, or I was trying to get something that I wanted and I said something rudely, or I was just trying to fulfill one of my natural desires of sex relation or emotional security, companionship, or my social security, or trying to look good with my fellows. And there's a number of different things. And the thing about this line is I make decisions based on self which later place me in a position to be hurt, but I almost always hurt others. Almost always. So Tommy's got something to say, so I'm going to let him have a chat on that. Go for it, Tom. Okay, so our troubles we think are basically of our own making, and that's exactly what Tommy described. And he could have easily chalked that up as, it was just a business decision, and, but it really was a decision based on self, because he actually wanted something. He was seeking procrastination. He wanted an easier business life, and he hadn't talked about it with anybody. This guy just offered. Tommy knew that this guy wasn't running any type of a program. Tommy already knew a lot of different things, but he made it out of a decision based on self and didn't consult God or others, and it later placed him in many positions to be hurt. So we think our troubles are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and I like that. They arise out of ourselves because I keep wanting outside contributions to fill what's wrong with me on the inside. So they arise out of me through these desires that we'll get into on another day. So they arise out of ourselves. The alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. And I love that line because when you're living in self, you can't see self. When you're living out of intention and you're hiding the motive, the best of intention, but when you peel back the layers of the onion, usually there's a motive of self-seeking, selfishness, or some type of self-centered fear in there. So you can't really see it. And I always say you can't see self with self. You can't see the problem with the problem. But he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of the selfishness we must, or it kills us. And I love how he writes that. Above everything. The most important thing above everything, because that's what this program essentially is about getting out of self. Above everything, I must be rid of this. I must, or it kills me. Well, I just gave you 2 examples at the start of this little study here today of 2 guys that died because they wouldn't work on this issue. And the thing about alcoholism is you're going to die in many different ways, and it's never going to say he died of selfishness in the obituary. It's going to say he died of a heart attack, or he died of this, or he died in a car crash, or he died of whatever it is. But at the end of the day, my opinion from what I've seen with the people that have died is they've died because they've never worked on the selfish, self-centeredness part of their program. And usually for the men that I've worked with, anyone that I know that's died in the program, almost always it's been over a woman or over money. And those, as a sponsor, the 2 deep-rooted things for a man is the finances and the status, and also the relationship, the novelty of a relationship. So those are the 2 deep-rooted fears. When Bill talks about where he had to remove these things root and branch, he means the branches are the defects that are easy to see, but you got to get down to the root. And a lot of the men that I work with's root is relationship, sex relation, the novelty of it and the lust, and then their desire for status and money. And those 2 things will kill most men. And I sponsor ladies too. And the ones that I see for ladies, and any ladies can correct me if I'm wrong, is the deepest rooted one with the women is relationships. That's the one that usually takes out a woman. And the other one is social status, how she looks to her peers. So above everything, we must be rid of the selfishness we must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us have had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. So I like that whole paragraph and a half, or it's a paragraph, and Bill says 3 times that I need God's help to get rid of the selfishness. And where does this kind of take me to? It takes me to step 6. Because step 6 is actually where I surrender my self-will in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Step 6 is so fucking important to understanding that is the actual surrender step in the program. It's worked in my step 10. But the understanding the principle and the basis behind step 6 is very important, because that is where the essence of selfishness gets worked on. That's why the principle is willingness. So anyway, we couldn't do this on our own power. We had to have God's help. And here we go. Here's the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God, period. It didn't fucking work. Me playing God doesn't work. It never has worked, and it never will work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life. Yeah, and when you think about that, the drama of life. When I go out into the world, all it is a whole bunch of thousands of people wearing masks, giving me the best version of who they think I want them to be. And then I go out there wearing my own mask, giving them the best version of who I think they want me to be too. Like my personality is a 2-part deal. It's who you tell me I am and who I want you to think I am. And when I commence those 2 things together, that's who I actually am. But the truth is, and that's why it's a program of truth, is that I'm not actually that. When I start listening and get deep inside of myself, and I start understanding who I really am, then we got some progress happening. So this is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be the director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch which we passed to freedom. What I like about that is this concept. Right now, it's only a concept. It's just an idea. What concept? That God is the father and I am his child. That he's the director and I'm the agent. It's just a concept, but it's the keystone of this new idea that sets me through the triumphant arch of freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from bondage of myself, because I'm actually the problem. When we sincerely took such a position, and when you look at the word sincerely, it means honestly, like wholeheartedly. When I sincerely took this position, not just like theoretical, like what actions am I doing to take this decision with honesty and integrity? When I take this position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer, being all powerful. He provided what we needed. So it's telling me, with my new employer, I'm going to get what I need. But I got to do 2 things. And these 2 things are very important if I'm going to actually get what I need. Because this is a relationship. This is a deal. He'll honestly give me what I need if I honestly give him these 2 things back. If I keep close to him and I performed his work well. Okay, perfect. And when we talk about new employer, and I really hammer this home with the sponsees I work with, I'm like, you don't work for Wheatland County anymore, buddy. You don't work for the city of Calgary. Those are the roles that you're assigned. When you're a father, that's the role you're assigned. When you're a husband, that's the role you're assigned. When you're at work, you're assigned a role. You actually have a fucking new employer, and his name's God. And when I take this position seriously, that God, I work for God, then everywhere I go, playing whatever role I play, then things start working out. So anyway, established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. And I like that, our little plans and designs, because in the scope of the universe, I'm a speck of sand. Yeah, it's my little plans and designs. They're so small in the respect to the world. More and more we become interested in seeing what we can contribute to life. There's a benchmark. Am I actually seeing what I can contribute to life, or am I still prying and taking out of life? When I go to an AA meeting, am I going there to deliver a solution and give a message for the newcomer and giving a message? Or am I still going there to take? If I'm still going there to take after a year, I'm missing something. I should be going there to give and take. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully. So my version of success most of my life is what I had and what you thought of me. What was my status, how much money I had, who was on my arm. Basically that second delusion. But as I start working for God and packing into the stream of life, I start facing life successfully. I'm able to lay my head on the pillow at night because I know that I've done some good things in the world. My brain isn't twisting with alcoholism of the things that I did today by trying to pry and grab happiness out of people's lives for my life. As we become conscious of His presence, we begin to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. We were reborn. We are now at step 3. Many of us said to our makers, we understand Him, God, I offer myself to you. So right there, it's just an offer. All I'm doing at step 3 is I'm making an offer to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. That means, please renovate me. I'm like a house. You renovate an old house, you go in and you sledgehammer it apart. And then all that's left in this renovated house before it gets rebuilt is a bunch of 2x4s and some wires that are stapled to the 2x4s. And it's gutted, right? Relieve me of the bondage of self, so that I may better do thy will. Please take away my difficulties. Please take away these difficulties. What are my difficulties? They're the defects of character. What are the defects of character? While I use these mind and manipulation tactics and things so that I can wrest happiness and satisfaction out of this world. It's the things that I try to grab with and take what I think I need out of life. It's my pride, it's my fear, it's my insecurity in my emotional self, it's my insecurity in my sex relation. It's all these kind of things. So take away these difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness. Victory over them, meaning it's a fight. It's a hard fight to relinquish these things that I've always used. They're like my weapons that I've used to get through life. And I got to lay down the weapons and surrender. But it's going to be a hard fight. And that's what step 6 is about. It's about fighting the defects and bringing God in. Because God is the only thing that's going to remove these things. We must be rid of the selfishness. Only God makes that possible. That's why step 6 and God are just tight. That's what gets me in touch with God. That victory over them may bear witness to those I would help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Again, may I. May means it's a possibility. Am I actually going to do thy will always? Well, I don't really get to that point until I'm at step 7. Right now it's a may. And I'm committed to the offering, and I'm going to allow this rebuild to start. Because if I can allow the rebuild, the renovation, by the time I get down to the end of the steps, hopefully I've been renovated and I'm the best version of myself that I can be. And I'm shiny and I'm sparkly and I have all these different personality traits. We thought well before taking the step, making sure we were ready, that we could last abandon ourselves to Him. And then the last thing that I want to highlight here is we come in Alcoholics Anonymous and a lot of people are just looking for happiness. I just want to get happy. I just want my life back and I want to get happy. And to me, like trying to get happiness out of this program as the goal is going to keep you drunk. What you got to understand is we do this work so we can be of service. Trying to grab happiness is like trying to grab a handful of sand and squeeze your hand, and when you open your hand there's nothing left. Every time I go to grab happiness, there's nothing left. Why? Because that's not the deal of the program. The program is to make me useful to God and my fellows. And then once I start doing that, what's the byproduct? The byproduct of doing this work is I get happy, I get joyful, I get contentment in my life. But it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, which is why the line in the book, common sense thus becomes uncommon sense, is so important. Because the way that I think I'm supposed to get my happiness, it's actually the opposite. I've been trying to grab and take and get what I want for me. But actually I learn if I can give, and the more that I can give and the more that I relieve myself of self, the more that I actually get what I want. But it doesn't make sense when you're going through the pain of the change in step 6, which is why a lot of people don't stay sober. 5 people out of 100 approximately make it to 1 year. Out of those 5 out of 100, 2.5 make it to 5 years. Why is that? Because they don't understand that the selfish, self-centeredness aspect and the design for living need to be explored. It's not about the substance. And then they quit talking to their sponsor, they quit doing inventories, they don't grow in understanding and effectiveness, and then the insanity of alcoholism returns, the insanity of I, self, me returns, and then we drink again because we succumb to the desire. If I'm too restless, irritable, and discontent, I will pick up a drink. It's a fucking guarantee. I will succumb to the desire, as so many do, setting off the phenomenon of craving, and then I emerge remorseful, and this is repeated over and over and over, unless I can experience an entire psychic change. And that's why step 6 is so important again. So just quickly to recap. Step 1. What makes my life unmanageable today? Well, I've obtained a certain level of serenity, peace, and contentment, and goodness. And that when that is replaced with anxiety, fear, or discontentment, and I keep allowing the same person, place, or thing, or defect, knowing what the results always are, because I can look at the pattern. I let this guy in my life, then my life is, I'm always anxious, and I'm always defending myself, and I'm always this. If I allow this situation in my life, if I allow this defect of anger not to get worked on, the results are always the same. And if I keep allowing it, it's the same insanity as step 2. I know what's going to happen when I pick up a drink, but I pick it up anyway. I know what's going to happen when I let this person in my life, or I allow this defect not to be worked on, but I do it anyway. And then it becomes a decision based on self, because I know what the fucking issue is. But if I'm too insecure to let that thing go, then I'm slipping down banana peel trail. In the book it says for the alcohol, we had to practice total abstinence with the drink. Well, so with certain things, I got to practice total abstinence. I got to get that person, that place, that thing, or this defect out of my life. But sometimes I can't. Like with Tommy, he got his business partner out of his life because he could. And that's what he did. He took steps with the lawyer to get that relationship ended because it was making his life too unmanageable. It caused him too much alcoholism. But with his ex-wife, who can also make his life unmanageable, he can't just kick her out of his life. So he's got a whole bunch of tools in this program. He's got prayer, he's got meditation, he's got inventory work, and he's got his honesty, and he can talk honestly now to her without having to run the world and run the whole universe. And so he's actually getting a lot of value in his relationship with his ex-wife today because he has the tools, and he can't just ixnay her from his life, right? But he also had a defect that was really affecting him, and he saw it, and we looked at the pattern. It's affected his whole life. So he took action on the defect, and he became willing to have it removed, but he had to do the work too. And a lot of that work was within himself, and it was picking up the phone. And I'm going to end this off with truth. Tommy walks today like I do, with truth. He can sit and know what's actually the truth within him, and when he's not being truthful to himself, if he's trying to people please others, he's actually lying to himself. And if he lies to himself too much, he's going to drink. So that's why God-centered 12-step pillars are so important, and getting vulnerable. And when you think of what vulnerability is the key to every honest, open relationship. The problem with being vulnerable is everybody actually wants it. Like, we all want to be vulnerable. That is like at the core of us with somebody else. The problem is we're so scared to be vulnerable because we open ourselves to hurt. And some of us have been hurt through being vulnerable. but it's the only road to a true partnership, to a true relationship. So I implore anybody, and with God in your life, you can be vulnerable. But if you're running the show, then you won't be vulnerable. So Tommy's able to be vulnerable today with his ex-wife, with his girlfriend, with me, and hence the 33 or 34 years of anxiety that he lived with is pretty much non-existent. And I have the same story with a lot of my defects. So basically, that's where I'm going to leave it tonight. If anyone has any questions or any concerns or has any feedback, we got about 10 minutes. And, if you got something you're struggling with and, you want to talk about it, we'll bring it back to the program and back to the book. Yeah, you're welcome, Melissa. And, as we go through this journey, you'll get to a place of truth within yourself. Like right now, you're going to set boundaries based on self. So you're going to set these boundaries in your life, but it's based on your own protection from a place of self, which is a good thing. But as you keep walking this road, you'll never have to set those boundaries because your inner guidance system will set the boundaries for you. And you'll know what's good for you and you'll know what's not. And if you're unsure, with God's grace, you'll be able to lean on your God-centered 12-step pillars and kind of discern this stuff. And like for me, no decision is made in my life until I'm 100% sure with God. And it's through meditation, it's through prayer, it's through talking with my pillars, it's through inventory, whatever it is. But it's like a tool. You got to sharpen the tool. And over time, this tool of intuition and truth actually gets sharper and sharper. But it takes a little while. But it takes your willingness to want to do it, right? Awesome. And like for anyone, for next week, if you're going to come back next week, in your prayer and meditation tonight, just ask God to reveal what are the, questions and what is it that you would like answers to. And, feel free to bring whatever you want to bring to the table next week. And we're here to help you get to the bottom of it, right? And there's a lot of growth through prayer and meditation and being vulnerable even here, because we all have each other's best interests at heart. We're not here to judge. And that's part of the growth too. Like being vulnerable and saying something in front of people that might make you feel weird. But through that faith of God, you'll understand that the fear has no actual power, right? Yeah, Tommy would call me and he's like, dude, I want to be dishonest. I'm going to be dishonest. I feel it. And I'm like, why? It's like, cause it just seems like it's the right thing to do or whatever, right? But he would call me to talk about it first. He's like, fuck, why do I want to be dishonest? Oh, no. No, I was just saying that Tommy would call me and say, dude, I was thinking of being dishonest today, and it just seems like it's the right thing to do, but I know it's not, but fuck. And he would just struggle with it, like, in the moment, right? He's like, that's why I'm calling you, bro. And it was just hilarious, though, because his mind actually wanted to do it, but he would call me first, and we would talk about it, and he would take a different path. But it's powerful, right?